They called for help, not knowing we were the last thing they should ever summon. It began on the edge of the Orion Veil, where stars died slowly and empires whispered their final prayers. That's where the signal came through, raw, panicked, and unmistakably alien, a distress call. Humanity shouldn't have answered, but we did, and we sent Kellen Voss. He stood silent on the deck of the Sparrowfall, staring at the transmission, looped for the 100th time. His eyes were burned and bloodshot, not from fatigue, but from memory. Play it again, he murmured. The AI complied. The same trembling voice returned. Static-laced, desperate. This is the Varelian Accord of Karos 3. To any sentient fleet, please. They're coming. They consume light. They eat suns. We trusted the wrong ones. Transmission ends. Kellen leaned forward, gripping the rusted rail. He was no diplomat, no scientist. Just a war-scarred relic from Earth's last stand. A commander of nothing now, but a repurposed freighter and a handful of exiled souls too angry to die. He should have ignored it, but he remembered Earth's silence. He remembered screaming into the void, begging for anyone, anything, and getting nothing. Humanity had learned its lesson. We don't ignore the cry. We answer, even if it costs everything. The Sparrowfall was old, a corpse stitched together with scavenged holes, leaking heat like a dying comet. But it carried survivors from the fall of Sol, and they followed Kellen not because of rank, but because he still believed in something. Down in the war room, Ava Strin, a cybernetic engineer turned combat tactician, panned through the data scans. From Karos 3, this isn't a trap, she said, flicking through the waveforms. It's real. Sun activity collapsing, whole planets flaring out like candles. Kellen's jaw tensed. How many colonies left? 4, maybe 5. The Varelians are scattered, tech is fractured, populations underground or orbital. They're running blind. Kellen closed his eyes. The Varelians. He'd heard of them during the old expeditions. Tall crystalline beings, peaceful, luminous, arrogant. They hadn't lifted a claw when Earth burned. Just watched. Ava saw the hesitation in his silence. We shouldn't go, she said softly. They didn't come for us when the period scorched Europa. They didn't answer when Mars fell. Why should we help them now? Kellen looked up, his eyes hollow. Because we are not them. Outside the cracked viewing deck, the stars flickered like dying embers. When Earth fell to ash, humanity scattered like cinders in the wind. The old governments collapsed under alien fire. AI silos rebelled. Orbital habitats starved in months. What remained wasn't civilization. It was rage wrapped in skin, held together by memory. Kellen Voss had watched his sister get atomized in the fall of Jakarta. He dragged comrades out of collapsed ships on Ceres. He had fought in the last stand at Titan's rings when the final Earth fleet suicided into the period mothership. And yet, here he was, answering a stranger's cry. The Sparrowfall dropped into the Cairo system, and the light bent wrong. That was the first sign something was deeply wrong. The system's main star, once a blazing yellow sun, now flickered like a dying flame behind veils of black static. Sensors jammed, comms distorted. Ava shouted from the console, gravity wells. Dozens of them, collapsing orbits everywhere. Sir, something's tearing this system apart. On screen, the remnants of the Varelian defense fleet spun lifeless, shattered hulls, melted towers, drifting glass corpses. Debris spiraled in eerie slow motion, as if time mourned them. Then Kellen saw it, a breach in space, not a ship, not a weapon, but a wound, as if the universe itself had been punched through. From within it, shadow leaked, dark, liquid, predatory. Voss, Ava whispered, her voice suddenly fragile. That's not a fleet. That's a predator. Something that eats stars. Kellen clenched his fists. The cry wasn't just a distress call. It was a warning, and now they were in its feeding ground. He activated the ship-wide channel. Everyone aboard paused. This isn't a rescue mission anymore, Kellen said, voice calm, cold, resolute. This is a line. We hold here, or there is no next. No one objected, because on this ship, no one had anything left to lose. Later, when they descended into the atmosphere of the last surviving Varelian colony, the sky split with fractures of red lightning and black flame. Kellen stepped out first. The crystalline towers were scorched and hollow. The once proud species barely clung to life. Huddled in flickering shields, their forms dim and broken. One limped forward, its once lustrous core now cracked. You came, it gasped, voice distorted through translation runes. Kellen knelt beside it. "You called," he said, "and we remember what silence feels like." The sky cracked above. From orbit, a tremor. Ava's voice cut in. "Kellen, something massive just exited the breach. It's moving fast. Real. Fast." Kellen stood. The Virelian's eyes dimmed in fear. The shadow was coming. And humanity, the ghost of a burned earth, were the only ones standing in its path. It didn't come to conquer. It came to erase the idea of us. Kellen Voss watched from orbit as the breach widened. Space warped unnaturally. Like skin stretched afar, bleeding darkness, something vast moved within. Not a ship, not a life form, but a will-made manifest. The air itself groaned. He stood motionless on the command deck, fist clenched behind his back. Ava's voice cut through the silence. "Sir, it's learning, adapting to everything we throw at it. I've never seen anything consume signals, energy, thought like this. The first probe they launched never transmitted back. The second disintegrated before it crossed half the gravity well. And then came the scream, not over comms, not through any channel, but directly into their minds. Even the ship AI stuttered. Core processes spiked into nonsense. Crew staggered to their knees, some weeping, others whispering names of long dead loved ones. Kellen dropped to one knee, pain lancing behind his eyes. Ancient memories ripped from the vault of his soul, his father's last words before Jakarta burned. The feel of ash clinging to his boots. His sister's laughter, gone, taken, tasted, and just as suddenly, it stopped. Ava was the first to rise. "It touched us," she said, shivering. "It knows us now." Kellen didn't respond. He couldn't. His fingers trembled as he reached for the console and replayed the last sensor snapshot. The entity had no defined mass. It refracted light and thought, warping logic and time around itself. But behind the noise was a shape, a silhouette of something that once was. Vaguely humanoid, a ribcage of stars, eyes like twin voids. He turned to Ava. "That's not just an alien. It was made." Her face paled. "A weapon," Kellen nodded. "Or worse. A mistake someone tried to bury, and now it's hungry again. Down on the planet." The Virelians tried to communicate. Their high speaker, a thin, six-limbed being named Saloonka, hovered weakly in front of Kellen and Ava. "We opened the breach," it admitted, voice flickering like candlelight. "We were desperate." Ava's eyes narrowed. "What the hell were you trying to do?" Saloon's crystalline skin flickered. "We reached beyond the stars, beyond our own plane. A plea, a query. We wanted to evolve." But something else answered. Kellen's voice was ice. "You made contact with what? Not a species." Saloon said, "A force, a devourer of light. It promised knowledge. Instead, it came to cleanse." The Virelians had thought they could harness it, use it to leap beyond biology, beyond time. But the breach they opened wasn't a door. It was a mouth. And now, it was open. Orbit trembled again. The Sparrowfall's proximity alarm screamed. A dark wave split from the breach. Not matter, not antimatter, but null matter. Absence made flesh. It lashed through a derelict moon, slicing it into crystalline dust. Ava barked. "It's targeting power sources, fusion cores, light, signatures, anything with structure." Kellen issued immediate orders. "Dim everything. Passive mode. Evac prep now." The crew moved like ghosts, cutting power to external hulls, rerouting heat to mimic dead rock. Kellen stared at the dark wave below. It wasn't just feeding. It was hunting intelligence, killing thought, ending memory. Not war. Oblivion. They didn't sleep that cycle. No one did. Below them, the Virelian survivors sang soft harmonics into the night, mourning the towers lost. The mines unraveled. Ava stayed in the engine chamber, rerouting power through black box redundancies, older tech that even the AI couldn't fully interpret. Kellen sat alone in the observation pod, staring at the dying sun of Karos 3. He thought of Earth, of the final hours when the period stormed the orbital defenses, and everyone knew no one was coming. He thought of General Hollick's voice. Across the comms, "We're out of time. Commander Voss, seal the vault. The last seeds are on your ship." He sealed that vault. He ran, and he had never forgiven himself. Now, an entire species sat on the edge of that same fate. Dawn on Karos 3 came in blood-red hues. Saloon Ka approached again. "Our song is ending," it said. "Will yours be next?" Kellen didn't blink. "Not yet." From above, Ava's voice crackled through the link. "Commander, It's coming again, this time straight at us. The breach pulsed. The shape moved. It had learned their scent. Arm everything, Kellen said, but don't fire unless I give the word. Ava hesitated. We can't fight that. We won't, Kellen replied. We're going to show it something new. He turned to Saloon. You open this. You made a deal. Time to make a new one. They led him into the deepest Virelian archives, a city beneath the planet's crust, built in an age when their race still dreamed of stars. Inside stood a black monolith, humming in wavelengths not heard in this galaxy for 1,000,000 years. This, Saloon whispered, was what we used to call. Kellen stepped forward. His voice was quiet. Then I'm going to scream into it. Above, the stars dimmed. The devourer arrived, and for the first time, humanity was staring it straight in the eyes. We didn't have weapons strong enough to kill it, so we gave it something worse, our memory. The monolith thrummed as Kellen stepped closer. The ancient Virelian structure vibrating at frequencies so old, even light seemed to hesitate. Around it, Ava's voice echoed in his ear from the command deck above. Kellen, we're out of time. The entity's accelerating. It packed in 2 minutes. He didn't flinch. Saloon Ka hovered at his side, barely holding together. Our ancestors warned us. This was not a beacon. It was a mirror. It shows what we are to what we were never meant to meet. Kellen placed his palm on the obsidian surface. It felt like ice and fire, like being watched by the past. I'm not here to talk, he said. I'm here to make it remember. With a breath, he triggered the override sequence Ava had wired directly from the Sparrow Fall. The monolith opened. It didn't split or crack. It bled light trays of memory, language, and grief streaming in pulses that painted the room in 1,000 dying sunsets. Kellen spoke, not in English, not in Virelian tongue, but in neural pulse amplified through the monolith's frame. And he told it Earth's story, the fall of Tokyo under burning sky, the screams across the Amazon habitats, the silence of Neptune Station after the AI sang its last lullaby, the way children still painted stars on the hulls of refugee ships, even when they had no home. He forced it to feel, forced it to see. Ava watched from orbit. He's doing it, she whispered. God help him. But the entity did not slow. It responded. The breach above Kara's 3 pulsed again, this time, rippling with emotion. For the first time since its arrival, it hesitated. Then it spoke back, a sound so deep it shook the planet's crust. Ava fell against the console. Crew screamed as their minds were filled not with words, but with reversals, forgotten truths, realities rewritten in real time. Kellen stumbled backward from the monolith, blood dripping from his nose. He'd seen it. He'd seen what it was. Not a weapon, he gasped. Not an alien. Ava's voice cracked through the channel. Then what? Kellen wiped his mouth. His eyes were on fire. A mistake. The Virelians had contacted something from outside time, a failed proto-civilization. A race that had once tried to climb the ladder of godhood and collapsed inward, becoming a paradox. The entity was their last echo. A hunger bound to nothing but logic, eradicate all futures that could surpass the failure of its own past. Humanity didn't terrify it because of what we were. We terrified it because of what we might become. Kellen stood, wobbling. We don't need to kill it. Ava's breath caught. Then what? We reminded that it already lost. He turned to Saloon. Can the monolith broadcast? The alien hesitated. Across systems, perhaps. It was never meant to be weaponized. Kellen's voice hardened. Today, everything is in orbit. The Sparrow Fall flared to life. Lights returned. Heat. Signatures spiked. They were no longer hiding. Ava rerouted all power through the Virelian uplink, feeding the monolith the stories, records, and neural maps of every human soul on board. The lives of orphans from Mars, the last love letter sent from Luna Base, a lullaby sung by a refugee mother on a mining asteroid. They broadcasted the idea of humanity into the void. Ava turned to her crew. If this fails, we burn. The crew nodded as one. Then let's burn bright. Below. Kellen raised his hand toward the monolith and whispered 3 words into the core. We are memory. The transmission ignited like wildfire across the breach, and the devourer stopped. It screamed, not in sound, but in recoil, as if touched by something it could not compute. It had consumed stars. It had erased civilizations, but never before had it faced something that fought not with fire, but with remembrance. Humanity, burned and broken, was still here, and it could not understand why. Across the battlefield of stars, the Varelian survivors watched as the breach began to shrink, not close, not vanish, but shrink, like a wound that had seen its own reflection and recoiled from healing. The entity did not retreat. It reeled. Kellen slumped to the floor, vision swimming. The monolith went dark. Ava's voice crackled in his ear. We hit it, not with weapons, with soul. He didn't answer. He was crying, silent, ragged tears, for Earth, for his sister, for the war they never asked for, but would always fight. Above, for the first time in days, the stars came back, the breach flickered, and in the void, the devourer drifted, wounded, yes, but not gone. They had not won, but they had made it feel something, and in that pause, that breath of cosmic disbelief, humanity had its spark. We struck first with memory, now it remembered us. The void pulsed. Above Kara's 3, the breach stopped bleeding, the devourer recoiled, curling in on itself like a beast burned by an ancient flame. It hung there, silent, wounded, calculating. On the Sparrow Falls Bridge, Ava Strin leaned over the console, hands trembling. Kellen, it's not leaving. Kellen stood behind her, pale but upright. His voice was quiet. No, it's learning. From the breach, something detached, a filament, thin and sharp, like a thread of negative space. It sliced toward the planet, silent, elegant, unforgiving. Before Ava could speak, alarm screamed. Incoming. Lieutenant Reese bellowed. It's targeting the monolith. Kellen's eyes flared. Get me down there now. Karo's 3's surface erupted in chaos. The filament didn't strike with force. It infected every structure. It touched turned black, like stone bleeding into shadow. Buildings collapsed inward, consumed by conceptual decay, thought stripped from matter. It was erasing meaning itself. The monolith flickered, its glow dimming. Kellen burst into the chamber with Ava close behind. Saloon cough floated near the pulsing heart, shrieking in harmonics so high. The air buzzed. The breach, it's hacking the monolith. Ava shouted. Kellen drew his sidearm. Useless against gods, maybe, but it steadied his hand. What does it want now? Saloon's voice trembled. What all failed empires want to become the only story left. The devourer hadn't retreated. It had understood. The monolith had shown it the one thing it couldn't consume, soul. Now, it would override it, or if it shuddered. The Sparrow Falls hull screamed under pressure as for more filaments burst from the breach, spreading like a hand across the system, each one reaching, twisting, threading into gravity wells. Reese slammed his fist into the console. There, trying to strangle the star. Ava's voice hissed through the channel. Kellen, they're going after the sun. Collapse that, and it wipes out Karos permanently. Kellen stared at the monolith, still resisting, but barely. We need more time. Ava's fingers flew over her wrist pad. I can pulse the fusion core. Draw power into a counter surge. Light, memory, thought. But we'll blow the ship if I miscalculate. Kellen didn't blink. Do it. The Varelians gathered around the monolith. Where once they mourned, now they chanted. Light returned to their crystalline bodies. Not full, not strong, but sparked. Kellen turned to Saloon. Can your people amplify the signal? Saloon's gaze dimmed, but nodded. Yes, but not all of us will survive it. Kellen didn't hesitate. Then let us die remembered. The breach pulsed again, and from it came voices, stolen voices, a billion overlapping echoes. Not of aliens, not of machines, but of humans. Dead ones, lost ones, lovers, parents, leaders, children. Torn from neural archives, battlefield comms, fractured transmissions across the galaxy. It was playing us back to ourselves, like a mockery. Ava collapsed to her knees on the deck, tears streaming. That's my brother. He died on Titan. How does it have him? Kellen growled. It doesn't understand mourning, only replication. The devourer thought imitation was enough. That mimicry could replace meaning. But memory isn't a sound. It's presence. And now, Kellen would show it the difference. Inside the monolith, Kellen accessed the deepest vaults. Earth's final transmission from the soul archives. The last thing ever sent before the planet fell. We are not perfect. We are not eternal. But we remember, and that makes us more than dust. He merged it with Ava's light surge and Saloon's harmonic frequencies, and then he broadcast it. Not just to the devourer, not just across the breach. He threw it into the stars. The system lit up. for fusion cores detonated in harmony, not as weapons, but as beacons. Their shockwaves weren't physical. They were emotional geometry carved across space. A defiant, brilliant scream. The Devourer paused, mid-pulse. Its filaments trembled. The breach shook, and then it retaliated. A wave of uncreation surged from the breach. Darkness not of absence, but of defiance to being. Light died where it passed. Matter lost name, memory, shape. The monolith cracked. Ava screamed into comms. "We can't hold this line, Kellen. You need to pull out." Kellen watched the Virelians collapse, one by one, as they poured themselves into the signal. Some burst into light. Others froze in mid-glow, like statues trapped between life and legend. Kellen whispered, "No, not yet." He stepped into the light, opened his arms, and let the monolith take him in. In that instant, the signal spiked across Karos 3, across the dying Virelian towers. Through the filaments and into the breach, humanity howled, not with anger, not with weapons, with the raw, painful, searing weight of being alive. And the Devourer flinched. Its filaments snapped back like lashes. The breach shuddered. For the first time, it retreated, not because it was defeated, but because it had felt us. And it feared what came next. Kellen collapsed in the ruins of the monolith, smoke rising from his skin. His eyes burned like suns. He looked at Ava through static-choked vision. "It knows us now." She knelt beside him, blood on her cheek, hands shaking. "What do we do?" He stared at the sky, where the breach still pulsed faintly, like a wound refusing to close. "We make it afraid to come back." We weren't its prey anymore. We were the fire it never expected. The breach had withdrawn. Not closed, not defeated, but staggered. Karos 3's scarred skies were quiet again, though the silence felt strained, like a breath held too long. Kellen Voss lay in the wreckage of the monolith, pulse barely stable, breath ragged. Ava crouched beside him, her fingers trembling as she checked his vitals. "You should be dead," she said, voice cracking. Kellen opened one eye, blood matting his temple. "Not today." Above them, Virelian survivors flickered like fractured starlight. Many had burned out in the resonant surge, but some still pulsed dimly, alive. Barely. Saloon Ka stood among them, slower now, its glow flickering like an ember. "You changed." Saloon whispered, staring up at the bruised sky. "It bled." "No," Kellen rasped. It remembered. Back on the Sparrowfall, Ava led him to the strategy deck. Hollow projections of the system bloomed around them, planetary fractures, radiation spirals. And most haunting of all, the still flickering breach, now oscillating at different wavelengths. "It's no longer just feeding," Ava said. "It's probing." Watching, listening, Kellen grunted, slumping into the command chair. "Then we've got its attention." Reese paced nearby, armor scuffed, voice bitter. "And what do we do with that? Wait for it to finish charging. Hope it doesn't. Blink a moon out of existence next time." Kellen's eyes narrowed. "No. We bring the war to its door." The room froze. Ava slowly turned. "You want to cross into the breach?" Kellen nodded. "We've seen what it does here, but we don't know what it is there. We've been playing defense since Earth fell. That ends now." Reese scoffed. "We barely survived that last surge. You want to take a suicide run into hell?" Kellen's voice sharpened. "This isn't about surviving anymore. It's about stopping it. For good." Ava leaned over the schematics. "We don't have a weapon strong enough, not even close, unless." She looked at Kellen. "You still have the Earth core fragment, don't you?" He didn't respond. Because of course he did. He had carried it since Titan, a shard of the last Terran fusion singularity, wrapped in containment fields and memory locks forbidden even to the soul ascendants. The last breath of Earth. Too unstable to use, too sacred to destroy. Ava spoke. Gently, "We could splice it into the breach engine, not as a warhead, as a key." Kellen frowned. "A key to what?" "To override his thought space," she said. "To flood the breach with humanity's last imprint, every sound, every soul, every scream. We'd force our evolution into its code base, collapse its logic structure. In other words," Reese muttered, "you want to infect the God thing with humanity." Kellen stood. Exactly. 3 hours later, the Sparrowfall burned through Karos 3's upper atmosphere, the Virelian towers shrinking below. The survivors, what was left of them, stared up as the human ship roared into the sky like a blade reborn. Ava stood beside the containment vault, hands over the Earth core fragment, eyes shining. "Once we breach, we get one chance if..." The fragment destabilizes. It'll vaporize us before we can scream. Kellen approached. Reaching into his chest pocket, he pulled out a small, cracked photo, faded, water-damaged. A girl with braids and dirt on her nose, smiling in front of a flowering tree. My sister, he said softly. Jakarta, last picture before the fall. He slid it into the containment capsule beside the core. If we're given in our memory, then it gets all of us. Ava nodded. Then we die as a message. They approached the breach. This time, it didn't attack. Instead, it pulsed. Opened slowly, inviting them. As if curious. As if ready. Kellen strapped in. Everyone ready? Reese muttered. I've been ready to die for 5 years. Might as well do it for something that matters. Ava's hand hovered over the ignition. She glanced at Kellen. Final words. Kellen leaned forward, voice steady. We were hunted, forgotten, burned. But we never surrendered. We never stopped remembering. Now it's our turn to write history. Punch it. The sparrow fall. Dove into the breach, and the stars went silent. Inside, there was no space, no time, only presence, a void filled with things that could not be described, only survived. Rivers of thought, mountains of extinct tongues, echoes of civilization screaming as they died. Kellen clutched the command chair, eyes burning. Ava screamed. It's trying to override our sense of self. Keep thinking. Anything. He focused on her voice, on his sister's face, on every memory that made him human. The ship began to twist, groaning under the weight of unreality. The hull peeled. Systems failed. The AI collapsed into static, but the Earth core held. And at the center of the impossible realm, something watched. The Devourer, unmasked. It stood taller than thought, stitched from failed futures. Its form, a collage of everything it had erased. It spoke not in words, but in probabilities. You are anomaly. You are threat. You are echo of error. Kellen rose from his seat, skin cracked from pressure, blood streaming from his nose. He activated the fragment. No, he whispered, we're the species that remembers. He hurled the Earth core into the Devourer's core, and everything exploded in light. We didn't come to destroy it. We came to infect the dark with who we were. The Earth core detonated in silence, not the silence of space, but of meaning. Inside the Devourer's realm, there was no sound, no vacuum, no flame, only intent. And in the instant Kellen Voss launched that core into the Devourer's heart, humanity's intent burst free, unstoppable. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a bomb. It was us. A tidal wave of thought, memory, love, rage, music, loss, and persistence exploded outward, a history encoded in raw neural signatures. Earth's pain and wonder, her birth and death, her final scream and enduring whisper. It hit the Devourer like fire through dry void. Kellen clutched the command rail as the spare fall buckled around him. He could feel it. Not just the impact, but the feedback. The creature was reeling, and it was fighting back. The breach flared into chaotic bloom, patterns unraveling in every direction. The laws of physics began to bend and collapse, time looping, identity fracturing. Kellen heard Ava's voice, 1,000 copies of her, echoing through his mind. Kellen, we're losing containment. He forced his vision forward. The breach was changing. The Devourer's shape flickered and shrank, no longer the looming godlike horror it had been. It now looked like a mirror, a shivering, collapsing mosaic of every species it had consumed, their voices pleading, their memories bleeding out. It had never been invincible, just undisputed, until now. On the sparrow fall, Ava slammed her hands into the controls, routing all power to core resonance. If we can hold this channel open just 10 more seconds, ship's integrity. At 30%, Reese shouted, hulls disintegrating. AI's gone dark. We don't need an AI, Ava hissed. We just need to be heard. Kellen turned slowly, bleeding from the eyes now. The human brain was never meant to endure the raw data stream of conceptual warfare. But he refused to fall. We need to finish this, he said through clenched teeth. We opened the wound. Now we pour Earth into it. He accessed the last protocol, the one even the Soul Ascendants had marked unusable. The total continuity archive, every story, song, image, DNA strand, name, dream, and death humanity had ever recorded, all crammed into a quantum core payload never meant to fire. He armed it. Ava's eyes widened. That'll kill us. It'll kill everything in the breach. Kellen locked eyes with her. Not everything. Inside the breach, the Devourer screamed, not in sound, in collapsing certainty. It had never known fear, never known confusion, but now it saw something it could not resolve. Defiance, even as its realm turned inside out. Kellen advanced to the central chamber. Gravity wept around him. Memories leaked from his skin, trailing behind like burning flags. He saw his father again, kneeling beside a collapsed shelter in Jakarta. He saw the stars above Titan, stained with smoke. He heard his sisters laugh, and then he heard the Devourer speak. Why do you persist? There is no survival. There is only repetition of failure. Kellen stepped into the collapsing light, breath trembling. We're not here to survive, he said. We're here to be remembered. He slammed his palm onto the core trigger. The total continuity archive roared to life. Outside the breach, on the ruined remains of Karos 3, Saloon Ka felt it before the sensors did, a tidal surge of heat and memory pulsing outward. Like a newborn sun, Varelians rose to their feet, faint flickers returning to their bodies. The breach pulsed, once, twice, and then it split open. From it, not fire, not destruction, but light. Blinding, golden, human light, streaked with music, coded in languages long gone, pulsing with the rhythms of Earth's oldest oceans and newest cities. The Sparrowfall emerged from the breach, hull scorched and ruptured, engines failing. Every system in cascade, but alive. Eva screamed from the helm. Kellen, we're clear. But Kellen didn't answer. He wasn't on the bridge. He was still in the core, fused to the control system, eyes wide open, tears drifting in zero. Gravity. The archive had connected him, made him the conduit, and it had cost him everything. In his final seconds, Kellen Voss didn't see darkness. He saw a tree, the one from the photo, his sister under it, laughing. He was 8 again. The sun was warm. Earth was alive. He smiled. We made it loud enough, he whispered, and then he was gone. The breach collapsed behind them, not sealed, not destroyed, but changed. A different kind of silence followed, not empty, but full of the memory Kellen had forced into its heart. Humanity had done more than fight. It had infected the Devourer with soul, and now the enemy would never forget us. Back on Karos 3, Eva knelt in the fractured core chamber. Kellen's photo in her hand, tears falling freely. Reese stood behind her. He knew it would kill him. He did it anyway. Why? She looked up at the sky. A sky still scarred, but whole, because someone had to be the story. The breach didn't close. It remembered, and that changed everything. Above Karos 3, the sky had stopped bleeding. The breach hovered like a dying eye, pulsing faintly, trembling in place. No longer an invader, no longer a god. It was something else now. It was listening. Eva stood at the shattered viewport of the Sparrowfall, her reflection broken across the glass. Kellen was gone, the command seat empty. His photo of his sister lay folded in her hand, soaked in blood and stardust. Behind her, the ship groaned. Systems barely held. The fusion cores were slag. Half the crew was dead. The rest were silent, watching, waiting. Reese approached slowly. Sensors show no movement. The breach is dormant. Eva didn't turn. No, it's awake. She stepped forward, keyed the comms, broadcast full system-wide. Luke Kellen's final sequence. Send the archive fragment to every surviving colony, every listening satellite, every drifting refugee pod out there. Reese hesitated. You want them to see his death? No. Her voice was steady. I want them to see what it meant. The archive rippled through space, riding the shattered subspace lanes like thunder in a cathedral, on forgotten moon stations. Children huddled around flickering monitors as Kellen's voice echoed. We were hunted, we were broken, but we were never silent. Let this be our answer, not with war, but with memory. On starships buried in asteroid belts, survivors wept. On derelict human enclaves long thought extinct, the beacon reached dead calms, and life stirred again. Humanity had spoken into the void, and the galaxy had heard, and something else had, too. The breach shifted, no longer pure black. It now shimmered with veins of light, our light, echoes of earth, of laughter, of fire, of pain. The Devourer's form rippled within, no longer coherent. It had taken humanity into itself, and humanity, like a virus of meaning, had rewritten it. Eva watched the pulsing tides. It doesn't know what to be anymore. Saloon Ka stood beside her. What was left of the Varelian elder barely holding shape. Then show it. Eva turned slowly. What It was made to consume, to erase, but now it remembers. The question is, what does it do with that? She stared at the breach. She had seen Kellen give his life to inject soul into the infinite. Now she understood. This wasn't the end. It was the judgment. A new ripple flared from the breach. The pulse swept across Karos 3, but it didn't destroy. It rebuilt. Crumbling towers froze mid-collapse. Dust coalesced. Light returned to crystalline veins. The dead were not restored, but the planet itself began to sing, not in Virelian tones, not in human voices, but in something new. Ava whispered. It's speaking back. The skies parted. From the breach came form, not monstrous now. A fractured beauty, a being formed of geometry and light, cloaked in the silhouettes of every race it had ever consumed. At its center pulsed a heart made of Earth's glow. It didn't speak aloud. It resonated. 1,000 emotions flooded the minds of everyone on Karos 3. Pain, fury, wonder. The Devourer had changed. It had been shown something stronger than fear, something they had never imagined. Empathy. Ava stepped forward alone. She stared at the being that once tried to erase them all. I don't know what you are now, she said, but you carry our memory. That means you carry our duty. The being rippled. Behind her, Reese muttered, What the hell are you doing, giving it a choice? She whispered. She raised her voice. You were built to end everything that threatened your design, but now you carry Kellen. You carry Earth. You carry us. So what do you do with that? The being shimmered, form quaking, shape uncertain. Then, slowly, it lowered its head, and it bowed. Across the galaxy, stars long dim blinked to life. Derelict gates powered again, subspace lanes cleared. Long-lost colonies received their first signal in decades. We are Earth-born, and we are still here. Humanity's beacon became a standard, and the Devourer became its messenger. Not an enemy anymore, but a witness. The crew of the Sparrowfall stood in silence as the breach finally closed, not collapsed, not erased, but transformed. In its place hovered a structure of glowing crystal, orbiting Karos 3 like a monument. At its core burned a single pulse of light. Kellen Voss, still alive, in the only way that mattered. Weeks later, Ava sat alone at the edge of the rebuilt Virelian tower. Below, new life stirred. Human and Virelian alike worked side by side, rebuilding, remembering. Reese approached with a datapad. Message just came in from the Lighten colonies. They want to join the signal. Ava smiled faintly. Then let's open the gate. Reese looked up at the sky. He'd have liked this. She nodded. He made this. She stood, and as the stars bloomed above, she whispered the words that would echo across 1,000 systems. We are the story that refused to end. We lost our home. We lost millions. But what we gained reshaped the stars. Years passed. The monument above Karos 3 still pulsed. A quiet rhythm, like the heartbeat of something that once tried to erase the galaxy and now stood sentinel over it. No longer feared, no longer alone. The Devourer was gone, or rather, changed beyond recognition. Now called the Witness, it roamed the stars not as conqueror, but as a vessel of memory. Wherever it passed, worlds' long silence began to speak again. It became a bridge between what had been lost and what could still be found. At the edge of that transformation stood one truth. Kellen Voss. His sacrifice had not only infected the Devourer with soul, it had rebuilt it from the inside. A single human life burnt bright enough to change something older than stars. But he was more than a name. He had become legend. In the spires of New Jakarta, children traced their fingers across murals of a man standing before a collapsing breach, arms open to the impossible. Above his head, the stars burst into lines of gold, every line etched with the names of fallen Earthborn. And always beside him, a girl with braids, laughing beneath a tree that no longer existed. Ava Strint stood beside the memorial, cloak drawn tight, hair streaked with white. Time had not been kind to her, but it had not broken her either. The galaxy called her many things now, Admiral, Ambassador, Keeper, but she only answered to one. Witness of the Witness. Atop the council spire, Reese leaned on the railing, eyes scanning the rebuilt world. 50 new ships joined the signal fleet this week. More volunteers than we've got seats. Ava didn't look up, because we've given them something more powerful than a weapon. He nodded. Hope. She turned toward him. Not just hope. Memory. The thing that outlasts war. The thing that couldn't kill. He watched her in silence, then muttered, You still talk to him, don't you?" She smiled faintly. "Every time the stars go quiet." The Sparrowfall had been rebuilt, not as a warship, but as a monument-class vessel. Its hull bore the scars of the breach and the names of its original crew. No one sat in the captain's chair. That seat remained empty, not out of grief, but out of respect. It sailed the stars now as the voice of Earth, broadcasting the archive to every corner of space. Some listened, some ignored it, but none dared stop it, because now the galaxy knew Earth might have fallen, but humanity endured. And the Devourer, it never returned as it had been, but traces of it were found in the strangest places. An abandoned alien colony restored by unknown hands, a derelict worldship discovered, its logbooks mysteriously recovered and intact, a mining vessel on the edge of uncharted space, saved by a pulse of golden light in the void, just before it collided with an invisible mass. The witness never spoke, it acted, and with every act, it spread the memory of humanity, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as the ones who refused to vanish. Ava's final broadcast, sent from the Monument Core, would become one of the most repeated messages in galactic history. It reached colonies, alien species, and machine minds alike. Even those who could not understand the language felt the weight of it. We did not win with guns. We did not erase the dark. We became part of it and taught it to dream again. This is not just Earth's legacy. This is what it means to be human. Generations later, a child born on a ship that never touched Earth would ask, is the story true? Did a man really stop the void with only his memories? The mother, her skin inked with constellations from a forgotten sky, would smile, not just his memories. She'd say, ours. And when that child looked to the stars, they would not fear the dark, because they would know the dark remembers us now. Above Karos 3, the stars pulsed once, soft, steady, endless, carrying forward the message burned into the Devourer's core by Kellen's sacrifice. We were born from dust. We bled under stars. We died on our knees. But we rose with fire in our name, and the galaxy would never forget that day. The stars learned what it means to be human. The end.